Where do we start with this one? The soap opera of writing or the 10 minutes of credits? Without that, that's 1 hour 40. The runtime, unlike the others, which were, you know, 2 hour plus. Or maybe just start at the beginning. The timeline Jean Grey turning is fit, although the events are wildly different. Then we get some space stuff, even though the scene would be impossible. The designer of the plane of the X-Men tells us it cannot fly into space. It just simply does not have the engines and the equipment. It flies there anyway. Makes it easy! Then turns out we are not watching an X-Men movie, we are watching Fantastic Four. Because that's what happens with Jean Grey. That's how she becomes the Phoenix. So unlike in the original timeline, where she always had this kind of power, no, she must get it from cosmic radiation accident. The only good thing this movie does is mark Professor X, the villain as she is. He's an artistic alcoholic who is just a villain by nature. Then a bunch of nothing happens and Gene seems to struggle with his powers. You know who doesn't struggle with his face? Nightcrawler. That will be important after a while. A bunch of nothing and same thing happens. Jean Grey then accidentally, okay, not accidentally, the technical term in the law would be involuntarily murder. So it's not accident, but also not premeditated. Despite the movie only offering the two distant points, the two extremes, the accident and the willful murder, it was neither. It was in the middle. But, the Magneto scene leads absolutely nowhere. And what does it tell you? That I already, without this watch, I've seen this movie like 3 times, and I didn't remember that the big villains of the movie are aliens. I'm that serious. They are even energy aliens. They are possessing some bodies, but that doesn't matter. They cannot be killed, they cannot be injured, they instantly, reform their bodies. They cannot even be imprisoned. What is, my last resort when it comes to the fantasy battles against super beings. Just pour a bunch of concrete on it and we are done. But no, these are absolutely... By the way, they are very reminiscent to Runaway Season 3 villains. But there, they obvious weakness. They have obvious weakness. They have limits. These don't. But don't worry, we will make it easy. So everyone is very moody and all that kind of shit, and we learn that this power was just since the Big Bang it was traveling in a straight line and destroying everything in its path or something. You know what we don't learn? Anything about the aliens except that they want to kill everybody. because they are superior and want to take over. We never learn what distinguishes them from the million already seen same kind of villain, like Apocalypse, or even Magneto, or I don't know, whatever. They are just a word in the script. It's not a story. Then they go to this mansion and then nothing really happens aside. The movie somehow makes us notice that black mutant, the chick with dagger, that dagger is very important to use her psychic ability. So, your guess is as good as mine, but it's a unique character and is recognizable. She doesn't do a lot, but through her abilities, she is established. And so when she dies on the train, the ant fight, I actually felt more than to anything else that happens in this thing. Like, Jean Grey, the Phoenix. The title is even Dark Phoenix, although the Dark Phoenix never appears in this movie. We will talk about it in a second, but let's talk about all the mutants and things in here. For some reason, Aurora Moral from Apocalypse is here, but like Psyche is not, and like I don't know why, but it's like Days of the Future Past. There are a bunch of mutants, but when we saw things, they never even existed or something. For fuck's sake. But okay, so they are doing these fights, if you can call them, but obviously no one was involved who can design a fight scene. So it's just a bunch of powers going out at the same time. It's just flashy effect with flashy effect inserted into flashy effects. I can't tell what is happening. Too many powers working at the same time in flashy effects. It's just a bunch of explosion going into other explosions, and everything explodes here. Even things that have, like the trains where it's just metal. Magneto crushed it, it explodes. That's, in the 80s it was acceptable because, one, no one expected better, two, they didn't know better, and three, they shot weapons. So things exploding made you show that something is actually happening. Because just shooting guns is in itself is not very interesting. Anyway, there is also this recycled plot line, the slap plot if you want, that the government is developing this anti-mutant technology, whatever, internment camp, yada yada yada. I thought they already have an internment camp with Magneto or something, but obviously not. Okay, that was not explicitly a prison, just whatever. My problem is, and your problem should be too, that in the mansion fight, they are fighting outside Magneto's people and the X-Men, Xavier's people. It's not the X-Men, I wouldn't call them at that point X-Men. So, the police arrives because Trump declared that in the next hour we must arrest every mutant that's noticeable or something. I give you that sure there should be an investigation and all that kind of shit, but you arrive there. I wouldn't question even the police uh, working when it comes to Magneto's people or if it would be anybody else. But you obviously see these are the X-Men. How did we get from 0 to 100 in a second against the X-Men? Even setting up ICE, Trump's ICE in America, they took at least a couple of months to select out the real fanatic people. Here, it's no time passed. They obviously see it's the X-Men, so their assumption should be that they are fighting some kind of supervillain, and they just had no other choice than fight in the middle of the city. So obviously they should be ordered to come to the station in the morning or something like that. But they instead arrest everybody. Then they are, of course, brought to some mobile prison, just like we've seen before, and it works exactly the same effect, just like before. And now let's talk about Miss Phoenix, who is a real modern Vogue girl boss. So, unlike on the original trilogy, not the original timeline, but the original trilogy, here Jean Grey didn't have the power from the get-go and was just suppressed by Xavier. No, she was just contained some that her father was afraid of mutants now because wife died. And that causes some emotional instability, but the power is external now. Jean only needs like a couple of days to think about the new facts, that her father was blamed her and was probably an asshole, and so but at least he gave up instead of beating her to then she's walking around what I can only call Pokemon evolution. She Poke evolves. That's a sad thing. So now comes Alien Lady. She would be a good cast if there would be any kind of backstory for her. Freaking Inhuman had more backstory. And very obviously, her race tried to suck in all this Big Bang power. Very obviously, that's the method. You solve this dilemma, just overcharge her and she will explode. Of course, this is dragged out for a long while. But does Jean need any kind of struggle to contain this power? No. Does Jean need... Not just develop, but control the power. No. Does Jean has any trouble figuring out what she has to do with alien lady? Or like all the aliens? No. And if the aliens were originally without bodies, energy being or something, how does atomizing them kill them? It just makes it easy. And in the end, they, you know, this movie is supposed to be the Dark Phoenix. The Dark Phoenix is a destructive force in Jean Grey. So when she got possessed by the Dark Force, by the Phoenix Force, there was something in Secret War, Battle Planet and Outlander, who is an other universe. Don't go there. So she still lives there. She wait a minute. So in the comics, I don't know what she does when she comes down and does her stuff, but it's nothing comfortable. Something like in the last time, but the some alien race is hunting her because she literally ate their planet. So the Dark Phoenix is literally eating people and planets even. Here, there is no such thing. She poses no threat. She's just Sansa Stark in Game of Thrones. I'm, 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 I do nothing, but I'm important, I assure you. And then she commits suicide. Here she could do the same thing, that I know what it must be done. And sure, then she looks at Claudia and she says, yeah, okay, and everybody is very sad. So she at least dies after not doing anything destructive on mega level and or that kind of stuff, turning into a very evil person like in The Last Stand. Again, very good characterization there. She doesn't. She flies into space and does a Pokemon evolution. She becomes from Charizard to Charmander and flies away like in Watchmen, the blow guy. You won't tell me that this is a good movie or like, okay, this is a Hallmark movie. Merry Christmas.